But the MCC persuaded him to use his extraordinary talents to promote their amateur game and see off the professionals.
Grace was really in a class of his own. Had he joined with the professionals in the sort of late 1860s, the game would have changed completely. We wouldn't have had the game that we've had for the last 100 years or so, because he was the great draw, and the crowds and the money would have followed him wherever he went.
Grace revolutionised cricket. He invented a huge repertoire of strokes and was one of the first English cricketers to play off the back foot as well as the front.
He introduced what could be called modern defensive play. Until he came along, basically the batsman did not use his pads. It was not considered proper. They were merely for defending his legs. You used your bat to hit the ball. And so for decades, batsmen would drive airily at the ball and it would come between bat and pad and bowl them. So by playing with bat and pad together, W.G. Grace initiated modern defensive play.
Despite his contribution to the art of defence, Grace was an extrovert on and off the pitch. A celebrity.
One writer called him part of the national baggage, and I think that gets it rather nicely. He was just part of the national scene, and he was just around for so long. I mean, he was playing first-class cricket in his 50s.
As an amateur, Grace was forbidden from making money from cricket. But to keep him on side, the cricketing establishment turned a blind eye to him making a fortune out of expenses.
Anything he could get out of the game, he would. I mean, eye-wateringly huge sums. £1,500 plus first-class accommodation for himself and his wife, plus, and this is the real killer on the expenses, all he could drink. That was for his first tour of Australia in the 1870s. By the 1890s, he was charging £3,000. I mean, you could buy a whole row of houses for £3,000 in the 1890s.
This practice, known as shamateurism, became part and parcel of the English game.
Grace's shamateurism was a matter of controversy throughout his career, and there were moments when the professionals got really angry about it and protested about it. Grace went blithely on, ignoring everything, and indeed stoutly denying that he was anything but an amateur. But the fact is that it was the most blatant example of shamateurism in an age riven by hypocrisy.
Grace, the gentleman, also behaved on numerous occasions in ways that were really not cricket. In 1882, in one of their first testy confrontations with Australia, the game was in the balance and England were fielding.
There was a new batsman, a young batsman called Sammy Jones, who'd come to the crease. The Australians stole a run, and then when the ball came back from the outfield, it ended up in Grace's hands. Now, Sammy Jones left his ground and patted down a divot on the wicket, and Grace promptly ran him out. And as a result of that, Spofforth, the great Australian fast bowler who's known as the Demon, completely lost his rag and worked himself up into a complete temper. And he said, "This will cost you the match." Now, England only had 85 to win, and then there was a terrible collapse, and Spofforth tore through the England middle order and tail and won this most improbable victory, inspired by Grace's lack of sportsmanship. So I always like to think that WG was actually responsible for the whole Ashes thing coming into being.
So shocking was the defeat that a mock obituary to English cricket was published, and the subsequent contests against Australia became known as the Ashes. Grace, the amateur gentleman, dominated the English cricket scene for half a century, and his long career helped cement the power of the cricket establishment. Yet it was to be a professional cricketer who would supplant him as the game's most prolific batsman. Jack Hobbs was the eldest of 12 from a working-class family. A player, not a gentleman he may have been, but Hobbs had a reputation for fair play. As a batsman, he was self-taught, and opening for county and country, scored 199 centuries, still a world record.
Hobbs was probably the great English batsman of the first half of the 20th century. His career spanned either side of the Great War. He was the consummate professional, played for Surrey, a wonderful batsman, elegant but at the same time functional. I think of him as the supreme craftsman, really.
But for all his superior batting skills, Hobbs was content to be a player in a world of gentlemen and defer to those who ran the game.
He was a very nice man. He was one of nature's gentlemen. And also, Jack Hobbs plays for the whole of his career as a professional, but always he's quite happy to accept the class divisions of English cricket. He's prepared to accept the superior status of amateurs.
Everyone knew that although Hobbs was the greatest cricketer of his generation, as a professional he could never be chosen to lead England onto the field of play.
I don't think, even if Jack Hobbs had aspired to the England captaincy, he would ever have been allowed to become England captain, because the mantra of the establishment in the 1920s and 30s was the saying of Lord Hawke, pray God the day will never come when a professional captains England.
Someone who had just the right background to lead England was Hobbs's captain at Surrey, the amateur Douglas Jardine. Born in India, educated at Winchester and Oxford, Jardine was just the chap the MCC wanted when England teams toured the Empire.
Mr. Larwood, Mr. Hammond.
And by the 1930s, England was playing Test cricket not only against the whiter parts of Empire, but against what were called teams of colour, like India and the West Indies. But Jardine gained notoriety taking on the oldest enemy in the empire of cricket, Australia.
When we get to Australia, we shan't forget the good wishes of those who've been kind enough to come and see us off. And we hope that we will do as they hope we will do, and return with the Ashes.
To win the Ashes down under in 1933 and combat Australia's batting genius, Don Bradman, Jardine decided to fight dirty. This son of the ruling elite turned to a miner's son, professional fast bowler Harold Larwood. Larwood was told to bowl aggressively, using the ball to attack the batsman's body, what became known as bodyline.
Jardine worked out a plan to combat Bradman. He knew he had, in the Nottinghamshire fast bowler Harold Larwood, the perfect kind of weapon, fast, accurate, and would do what he said. I still, just talking about it now, 75 years later, find it shocking. It was a plan to basically attack the batsman's body, and you have a ring of fielders around on the leg side, close to the batsman, who would simply take the catches as the poor batsman, defending, without a helmet, defending his body like that. Ring of fielders around, plop, thank you very much. It was not, in any sense, cricket. Even if we strip cricket of its ethical dimensions, it was still not cricket.
Douglas Jardine was miscast as a cricketer. He really should have been a general. Bodyline was the sporting equivalent of the invention of the tank. It was an absolutely brilliant invention, but the trouble was that they weren't at war with Australia. They were trying to play cricket against them, and Jardine didn't really get the point of that.
It was at this point in the game that Woodfull was unfortunately struck on the heart by a ball from Larwood which got up.
Bodyline bowling resulted in several Australian players being injured and frosty relations between the two countries. But this brutal cricket worked. Jardine returned to England with the Ashes.